Each CakePHP model has access to a default set of attributes. These attributes are based on the naming conventions that we covered earlier in this course. Since the developers over at CakePHP are realistic, they acknowledge that not everyone will be able to create their database from the ground up. This means that all the model attributes that are set by default can be overridden. This benefits us as a developer because it gives us more control and helps us with legacy databases and databases we've inherited. CakePHP has a list of the most used model attributes. I have reduced this list even further to those model attributes that I feel are the most commonly used. The first is the use DB config. This specifies the database connection that will be used. It defaults to the default database connection. For example, I have my item model and I want to set this new attribute. I would say public use dbconfig and have it equal to the new database connection string variable. In this case, I'm setting it to live. In the comments, I've put what is the default value, and in this case, it's default. The next model attribute is useTable. This specifies the table name that the model will be using. This is an important attribute if you're not using the CakePHP naming conventions. In order to set this attribute, I would say public useTable and then equal to the table name. So in this example, I would have an items table by default, but since my actual table name is products, I would set the useTable to products. The next model attribute is the primary key. This attribute is used if the primary key is something else besides the default naming convention of ID. For example, if my primary key was item ID, I would set public primary key is equal to item ID, where in this case the default would be ID. The next model attribute is the display field. This specifies which database field should be used as the label. This is used in scaffolding and in the find list calls. If this attribute is not set, it will use the name or title. So for example, in my table of products, my actual product name is called product name instead of name or title. I would need to overwrite that with a display field. I would type public display field equal to product name. Again, the default is name or title. The last attribute I would like to go over is the validate. This declares the rules that the model will use for validation. We will cover this model attribute in more depth later in this module. Let's go over to our catalog project and see if we can use any of these attributes in our models.